What do you look for? I may be opening a can of worms, but what do you look for in a president of the United States? Never mind. I'll just start talking now. Okay. Aside from the legal requirements that he be 35 or he or she be 35 years old, 14 years a resident, and a born citizen, there are a lot of unwritten rules, true or not, to becoming a president. You can't just come in with that minimal qualifications and pass, right? You might hear people say they need to have proven character, integrity. Or you might hear them say that they need overall leadership experience so that we know what they'll do in hard times. Maybe they need political experience so they know how to work with people who differ from them in a big way. Maybe they need to know something about business since they're controlling one of the largest economies in the world. That would help, right? Maybe they need a decent education to handle all the information coming at them, to be able to grasp what's going on. As commander-in-chief over the military, they better have some military experience too, right? Among other things, right? We want them to be publicly a Christian, at least have the same worldview and not like be plural theists, right? Polytheists. We want them to be, they probably need to be really popular to get the vote, for one. Not extreme, but modest in their decisions. Lots of campaign money probably would be a good idea. Picture perfect family. Mature, but young enough that they don't die on us. They probably need to be well-dressed. And then some others that just historically speaking, male, tall, broad shoulders, white skin, charismatic, and a vice president. Usually are some of the, historically, those are the ones that get the job, generally speaking. Now I wonder if I was to ask, what kind of qualifications should a officer in the church have? What would you say? Opinions? Would you have some? Would you have any? Well, yeah, good character. What else? A Christian, that would be basic. Yep. Frugal. Love God. Yeah. Paul, believe it or not, had a thing or two to say about this. And he didn't like that some people in the church of Ephesus were teaching non-biblical doctrines. Not just unbiblical doctrines, as in like it had something to do with the Bible, but it was against it. But just totally non-biblical doctrines. Myths and strange stuff. They weren't obeying their conscience. They were twisting God's word to make people happy instead of humble about their sin. One guy, Hymenaeus by name, was freaking people out by his post-resurrection theory. Like, hey, the resurrection has already happened, so how do you like your new bodies? It was kind of a problem. And so Paul wrote to the leader of this church. His name was Timothy. That is my first given name, by the way. Timothy. He wrote to him to clarify not only who they should be adding to their pastoral staff, but also who should be deacons. Deacons. Now, to some that may be kind of a strange word. What is a deacon, you ask? And actually, that's my first order of business, because today we are talking all about deacons. It's the next section of what I'm reading in 1 Timothy chapter 3. You don't have to go there yet because we're going to go somewhere else first. But I'm going to answer 3 questions today. What is a deacon? How do you become one? And why in the world, men, should you want to become one? Should you try to become one? So let's start off. What is a deacon? And I'm going to do this in a little different way that I haven't really tried before. So bear with me. I think it'll be fun. I'm not going to tell you what it means. I'm going to let you use your noodle to decipher by context what it means. And I'm just going to read to you the Greek word. Fair enough? Let's try this out. If you want to cheat, and you're fast enough, you can do that. Mark 1:31. And he came to her and raised her up, taking her by the hand, and the fever left her, and she diaconeted them. She diaconeted them. Good guess. It was Peter's mother-in-law in their house. Diaconeted them. Here's another one. But Martha was distracted by all her diaconia. And she came up to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the diaconeting alone? Then tell her to help me. What is it? Serving. Do you speak Greek? Yeah. Do you sail too? I sail. For who is greater, the one who reclines at the table or the one who diakoneos? Is it not the one who reclines at the table? But I am among you as the one who diakoneos. Jesus said that, right? So, you guessed it. Literal meaning of diakoneo means to wait at tables. Food prep. Okay? It became, though, a general term to serve. And it was used to refer to all kinds of assistance, assisting in all sorts of tangible ways. You might remember this one, Matthew 22:13. Then the king said to his diakonases, bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We're sort of a task force for the king. But they weren't handing him a plate of roasted lamb, I'll tell you that much. Then the most pertinent example to our text today is found in Acts chapter 6. And I want you to turn there. I did what Pastor Steve said never to do, and don't drink coffee the morning you're going to preach, because it makes you froggy. Here we go. I have water now. Should have had water then. All right, Acts chapter 6, verse 1. We're going to see the author here, Luke, uses both literative and figurative meanings. And it has some parallels to Paul's instructions in 1 Timothy. That's why we're going here. It says, if you're there, verse 1, now at this time, while the disciples were increasing in number, this was fairly early on in the church, but they were probably, it could have been up to 20,000 people in the church in Jerusalem. A complaint arose on the part of the Hellenistic Jews against the native Hebrews. So Hellenistic Jews were the ones who were scattered in what was called the diaspora, the scattering, and they started to learn Greek. So that's what Hellenistic means, is Greek speaking. So the Greek speaking Jews, they had a complaint against the native Hebrews, those who stayed in Jerusalem and continued their Hebrew language. And they were Jews. They were all Jews, but these ones hadn't changed their language, hadn't started mixing with the Greeks. And so there was a little issue there because they're like, we're not getting what we're supposed to be getting. And they said because their widows were being overlooked in the daily diaconia. So the 12 summoned the congregation of the disciples and said, it is not desirable for us to neglect the word of God in order to diakoneo tables. Therefore, brethren, select from among you 7 men of good report, good reputation, full of the Spirit and of wisdom, whom we may put in charge of this task. But we will devote ourselves to prayer and to the diaconia of the word. So, as you can see, it means service. Okay? And generally it means to serve in a practical way. Specifically with tables. In this case, it didn't necessarily mean food. My English translation, NASB, has the food in kind of an italics to show that it wasn't a necessary part of the text, but it's the most likely meaning. It could also potentially mean that they were distributing money of sorts. It was kind of a financial thing to help out the widows. Either way, it was a table that was used for distributing things on. It was a, practical means of helping the poor widows. And when that became too much for the 12 apostles to maintain and do their Bible teaching, their Bible preaching and prayers, they made a call. They made a decision that let's divide the labor up this way. And they said some are going to handle the hands-on task. They chose 7 men. And then the others were going to handle prayer and the teaching of the word. So that was the way that they divided up the workload when it just became too much for a few people. Now, some people have said that this is the earliest reference to deacons, but I'm thinking it's maybe not because it's not actually called that by name. They're not called deacons. In fact, both types of activities described here, the serving of the word and the serving of food, they both use the word diakoneo. So although that word is used, it's a really common word for serve. Like it's used about 98 times in the New Testament. So it's a really popular word to serve. In some cases, it means deacon. But what this does tell us is a good precedent that when the workload got too much, they divided it this way, which is, and when the ministry couldn't be done by a single group of people. So I thought to myself, what, besides food prep, what in a church like ours would a deacon of that day be responsible for if they could be put in charge of that task? And this is just to kind of get you an idea of, okay, this would pertain to a deacon here. The main thing is that you keep elders elding and whatever is necessary to facilitate ministry. Does that make sense? To let the elders do their thing, focusing primarily on the ministry of the word and to prayer. Okay? But what else could they do specifically? Facility maintenance. It just so happens that our up-and-coming new senior pastor, I should say, he's already a pastor. He's been our pastor for 10, 15 years? Long time. But Pastor Steve Finkbonner, he has a background in fixing things, like maintenance, like professionally. That's what he does. Does. But now that he is kind of stepping into the senior pastor role, can you imagine what's going to happen with his time? His time to be, fixing the sprinkler system outside or working on the door lock over here or fixing this or that. Yeah, he's not going to have much left. We're going to need some backup in here. So I know that he's working already in that direction to kind of bring people along. But that's the kind of thing that a deacon would do. So you sign up, count me in. You just point to it, and I'll fix it. That's the kind of thing that a deacon did. Building prep for services, right? You guys know that sometimes we do transitions in here where we turn this into a roller skating rink. I mean, a castle, okay? That's going to happen. That's the kind of thing that a deacon might do. They were put in charge of that, but not just like, okay, elders are here, everybody else is here, and then let's just gather along and brrr. No, it's something that a deacon was actually put in charge of so the pastor, the elders could say, see ya, and it would get taken care of properly. You see the difference? Somebody who would be put in charge of that kind of thing. You could have the collecting of offering, the distributing of the benevolence fund to the needy, close up. Pastor Steve Van Vleck, I have a question. Over the years, who's been the one to turn off the lights and lock the doors? Primarily.
Glenn's good at it.
He's good.
One of the pastors usually is the last guy.
Last guy out. Yeah. And then who's the person who unlocks the doors and turns the lights on?
Josh does a good job of that.
Nice. Because they come for practice, right? A little bit? Yeah. Cool. So there's some division there, but I can imagine you being a pastor where you're preaching every single week and you're ministering to people, and sometimes that goes longer. Sometimes it would be beneficial to go to coffee right now because this is a very weighty issue that's going on, and I need to minister to this person. To know that, hey, that's taken care of, wouldn't that be would that not have been a sweet thing? All right. So there's lots of other things. Safety team, financial accounting, sound booth, AV tech support, bulletin printing, resource corner, website management, supply purchasing, retreat preparation, picnic preparation, introducing visitors that come in from the outdoor. They don't know you from Eve or you from Adam. They could know something about who you are and what your stage of life is and go, hey, I think this person could probably talk to this, sit next to this person. They might be able to talk about something intelligent besides the weather or the weather. Introducing visitors, a parking attendant when it gets overcrowded. We have special events. I know Glenn just kind of parks a couple vehicles out in the lawn out there and it kind of starts the flow. But if there was anything more complicated than that, somebody could attend to that. Overflow seating response. You get a huge crowd in here because of a special event. What do? Somebody's got to deal with that. You're going to leave it to the pastor who's busy ministering to the people and on a spiritual level, or is he going to be the one trying to make things happen? So you see what I'm saying? You get where he's a diakonos. Home project help. This is something I just heard an announcement yesterday at the men's Bible study and breakfast that we're going to do a thing where if you have a project that we can come and help you on, we want to come and do that. That's something that a deacon, because we all have those projects that's like, well, if I don't do this, get some help, it's going to take me, I might get it done this summer. But if I had 3 or 4 people to just work with me and we could just get it done and it'll be done and have long-term effects, that's the idea, is that we'll be able to do that. And maybe you could help with that, but there's fellowship that comes with that. So it's kind of cool. Transportation. Some people, I wonder, how many people do you know that might actually come to church if they had a ride? Because not everybody can get around maybe like they used to, or whatever the case may be. Could you serve in that way and kind of be in charge of making sure that, there's no driver for them this week? I wonder if I could do that or somebody else could, and line that up. See? Transportation. How about a needs board? We used to have a thing in here. I remember that there was, if you had a need for something, a couch or whatever, you could put it on the needs side. And if you had an extra couch, you could put it on the stuff side. It's a way to link people that have needs with people that have stuff. And it worked out pretty sweet. But it takes maintenance to be able to do that and to keep that thing up and visible and useful. I don't see it anymore. But maybe that's something that could be done by a deacon. Who hauls the trash? Because the dumpster guy doesn't come by. I don't see a dumpster. Who does that? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. Just do it. Raise your hand.
Karen McFarland, make sure it gets out there.
Karen McFarland. Okay, that's cool. Yeah. Everybody. That's not going to work, people. That's not going to work. I'm just saying. Pastors tend to just own it and do it. That's not going to work. So now you see kind of what we're up against. This is the kind of thing that a deacon would do. All right. In the New Testament churches, some of the New Testament churches would have dedicated officers that would handle any number of these special tasks. Okay, maybe they wouldn't handle all of them, but maybe they would handle sections of them. In addition to whatever other special task might come up at the spur of the moment. 9 Marks Ministry, I think it's called. They kind of help churches become strong and fruitful and kind of be well-rounded in their approach. And they had this article that they put out titled, "Deacons Are Like Shock Absorbers." That's pretty cool. There's this big old boom that comes to the church, and they kind of find a way around it so that it's not such a big impact on the church. I think of them as SEAL Team 6, They got the threat to the ministry, and you take out the threat. Not the person, okay? But you take out the threat that's happening, because the ministry is that people get hear the word, they get prayer and things like that, and also physical assistance. All right, so it's interesting what happened in Jerusalem, okay, with that division of labor in Acts chapter 6. It basically parallels the structure that was later given by Paul to Timothy and to the church in Ephesus. Turn there now, 1 Timothy chapter 3. This is where I've been wanting to get to this whole time, because this is the passage that comes to me as I'm preaching through 1 Timothy. We're going to talk about how to become a deacon. First of all, you need to qualify. Men of dignity is the first qualification that comes up in verse 8. It says, deacons likewise must be men of dignity. This is the same word that is used for the dignity that an elder has when he's disciplining his children. So it's the same with all dignity. An elder has to do that. Well, here that a deacon has to be a man of dignity. He also, like an elder, needs to be self-controlled. There's 3 words that kind of cover the areas of what he needs to be controlled over. Not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, or fond of sordid gain. These are 3 temptations that could enslave a person. Double-tongued would mean saying one thing to one person and another thing to another person. Okay, that's kind of a temptation, right? You're going to be involved in various different ministries and aspects of ministries at different times. You may be tempted to say, this guy, he likes it this way. And then you might go tempted to say to this person, well, that person never likes it that way because I don't like it that way. You see what I'm saying? There could be that temptation to twist things around a little bit, say one thing and mean the other, is another way to look at that. Double-tongued, not be sincere. Okay, not addicted to wine, not addicted to wine, not given to much wine. Okay, that was also a requirement of the elders. And also, not fond of sordid gain. I kind of like how the KJV has it. How does that? It's not greedy of filthy lucre. It's one of those that you have another one, a King James versionism. Whithersoever thou goest. I forget, she mentions that one. Joshua 1:9. Yeah, I will be with you whithersoever thou goest. Anyways, this is another one. It means to be eager for dishonest or unrighteous gain. You're getting something for free that you kind of just swiped or took. Can you imagine why these 3 things would be important for a deacon? While these qualities would be important for a deacon in charge of like handling money, ministering food to people, being in charge, having keys to the building. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, yeah. You would keep the stuff that belongs to the church would still belong to the church when he left. Like an elder, the deacon was to be a one-woman man. It says that in verse 12. Deacons must be husbands of only one wife. It's the same wording as in for elders, a one-woman man. I've seen some scholars say, well, they can't be divorced, but other careful scholars say, well, it doesn't actually say divorce. The word divorced is not there. It's a one-woman man. And the gist as I receive it is that you need to be devoted to one woman. You don't have various women you're thinking about and kind of chasing after and dreaming about. You have one that you're solely focused on. And I suppose that a divorce, though, being what it is, it would depend on the situation, how it all went down, and how things sit now. But enough of that. He needs to be a good manager of his children and home like an elder. It says good manager of their children and their own households. Managers is like idea of ruler and being in control. It can't just have kids that are just kind of off doing their own thing, or when they're in the group, it's just kind of chaotic. He's got his children under control. Now, one thing you don't have to be able to do is you don't have to be able to teach. Elders have to be apt to teach, able to teach. A deacon does not have to be apt to teach. It's not a requirement for them. But they do need to undergo some testing to confirm that they are indeed beyond reproach like an elder. That is, they're above reproach. There's not a lot of things people can say about them. Okay, when you look at their work life, when you look at their home life, when you talk to people, their friends, you talk to their neighbors, it's a consistent picture of uprightness. They're not giving you two sides of the story. When they're at church, they act one way, but when they're in their other part of their life, they're not that way. Maybe the requirement to be tested is because a servant could too easily kind of go under the radar. As a servant, you come up to a person you are wanting to serve and help them, and they're like, "Sure, please help us." And so he makes the point. By the way, you better double check them, because there is the possibility that they might not be in it for the right motives. Now, in verse 11, that I skipped over it for the sake of ease of thought, but in verse 11 it says, "Women must likewise be dignified, not malicious gossips, but temperate, faithful in all things." Now, there is a little bit of a debate about whether these are deacons' wives, or whether it's an assistant, a female assistant to a deacon, or what is called a deaconess. That's been said before. And after going through as many of the arguments as I could find, I'm in the favor of it being the deacons' wives, and I can explain that to you later. But basically, what we can say about it is that whatever the case is, that the women who are here are part of the ministry of deaconing. They're functioning in conjunction with the deacons at that level. So maybe their focus is maintaining the nursery. Okay, great. That could be a female role, or maybe they work with their husband in making sure that rides happen for people getting to church. I don't know. That's an example, throwing it out there. It makes sense, though, when you look at it that way, that you want to have the women would also be, in a sense, they would be held to the same moral standards. Okay? In fact, that's exactly what you see. There's a direct parallel to the deacons. As the men are to be men of dignity, the women in verse 11 must likewise be dignified. The men are not to be double-tongued. Likewise, the women are not to be malicious gossips. They're to control their tongue. Just like the men are not to be addicted to wine, to much wine, the women are to be temperate, or the actual word is sober. Sober, not drunk. But it could mean, temperate in the sense of you have kind of sound, reasonable judgment, not like a drunk person who doesn't make very good decisions. And then finally, above reproach is what the deacon is supposed to be after being tested. A woman is supposed to be faithful in all things. It's kind of an overall general statement of their walk. Are they faithful in all things? Okay. Now you'll notice these qualifications that are given for a deacon are primarily moral qualifications. It's not that you look out among the crowd and you pick the ones who have the most experience at the job, or the ones who have the most skill with the numbers, or the ones who just are available. Whoever can do it, put them in charge. No, they have moral qualifications. And there's a reason for that. This is a ministry of Christ's church. It's a ministry position, an office that you hold, and it's actually somewhat public. These people were recognized as holding an office. To the Philippians, there was mention, it's the only other real clear mention of deacons. It says to the, see if I can find it. I'm mentioning it out of place. I'll just go there. I had it in my notes. It says, Paul and Timothy and bondservants of Christ Jesus, to all the saints in Christ Jesus who are in Philippi, including the overseers and deacons. So you see, they're mentioned in a sense. Their office is mentioned by name. So they have. It's like they're recognized in the church as a group. And so they need to have these moral qualifications that set them as an example, because as you rub shoulders with them, as you bump into them and they're doing ministry, you want that to be a God-honoring and uplifting experience, right? That's who you want in those positions. Not just a person who can get the job done. So that's the first thing. You have to qualify. Second is you have to be available. As I tossed out all those different types of ministry opportunities that are there, there are lots of duties which you might be called on to do, right? It's the spur of the moment, hey, need you to do this. But a lot of them could be planned out. Either way, it's going to take up some of your time. Now, for some of you, that might actually be a good thing. To take up some of your time, keep you out of trouble. But it's a good thing. Third, you have to be ready to invest yourself into it. Be ready to invest yourself into it. 1 Timothy 3, verse 13 speaks of those who have served well as deacons. Those who have served well. Those who have diakoneoed as diakonos. Those who have served well as deacons. Indicating that there's an expectation that you would pour yourself into it. You would work at it. And you would be exemplary in your service to the church. Just like an elder is to aspire to and desire the office and work of an overseer, you have deacons who are going after it, who are serving well. Now, this leads me to the why. Why in the world would you, a busy man, trying to pay the bills and take care of all the other priorities that are facing you right now, with the season is just starting, you got plants sprouting, you got buildings that need refurbished, you got your cars that need to get fixed before it's too late and they start crashing on you, breaking down in the middle of the highway. You got people that you need to attend to, people that need your help. Okay, why in the world would you want to try to become a servant in this way, to become a deacon? First of all is this one: you get to follow the Lord's examples, who came not to be diakoneoed, but to diakoneo. He came to serve. Same word. There's joy in that. I will tell you, there is joy in being able to, with the Lord, serve his people. Even when it comes to persecution. I remember being shocked by this when the disciples, like I think it's in Acts chapter 4 or somewhere early on, they just gotten beaten for believing in their faith. And it says that they went out rejoicing that they had been considered worthy to suffer for the name. Yeah! I just imagine that. It's like, wow, okay, cool. And, I had some small amounts of that when I was going to college. And you know what? There is a bit of joy that comes from knowing that you are kind of like the sacrificial lamb of sorts. Not that I saved anybody from their sins, but like, I just got raked over the coals for something that I didn't. They hate the Lord, really. But there was camaraderie in that, I suppose. Why else would you want to become an elder, to do the work of an elder? It's the God-ordained step in the faith. Hebrews 5:12 says, implies that there's a time frame for your growth. That as time goes along, you should be growing in your faith. It says it this way: for though by this time you ought to be teachers, you have need again for someone to teach you the elementary principles of the oracles of God. And you have come to need milk and not solid food. That was a rebuke. Yeah, that's not good that you're this far along in time, but you're not this far along in your maturity. If your maturity in the faith doesn't match your age in the faith, this could be a next good step for you. To strive to be a servant to the church. At Perry Pallet, that's where I work, supervisor of the production shop. We've been having trouble getting our quality to match and our speed to be kind of in balance. And so we kind of just started from scratch. Just said, all right, forget everything you've learned about this operation, this line where you have repairing happening. And we're going to reteach you all the details from beginning to end. Both quality, detail, nitpicky things and what you're supposed to do, and then how fast you're supposed to get the job done to make it pay the bills, because there's a balance there. Customers don't want to pay for Cadillac, if they're buying the lower grades, and we sometimes get that mixed up as we're repairing. So we started over, and what we did is we gave them 5 check days. You're going to have 5 check days, and if you do an excellent job in all these things we're asking you for and all these things we've taught you, we will put a sticker on your thing, and you got that day. And once you get to 5 check days, that shows us that you have picked up everything we've taught you. It's not a time for me to teach you. It's a time for you to show me that you got it. And what that is, and it shows that your capability is proven. It also proves your dependability. We know you know what to do. But it also shows that you have proven worth, right? And we actually give them a raise as soon as they get those 5 checks done, and with kind of chatting back and forth, and we know that they understood what they're doing. And then they get this raise. And it's a pretty sweet deal. And what it has done is that it has upped kind of the level of people are gearing up to go at their day of repairing pallets. I mean, some of these pallets, they look the same. They got broken deck boards, top and bottom, and they got broken 2x4 middles. It's like, but they all just kind of blend together after a while. We're doing, 500 of these in a day. And it's sort of like, have I seen this? Haven't I seen that one before? And so you start to kind of lose your tenacity on it. Well, this has kind of helped that. This could be that way for you. This office of deacon is open to anyone who qualifies and can carve out a chunk of time and can devote themselves to this task. That could be a good next step for you. Third is mentioned that you will attain for yourself a high standing. That is what I was talking about. That high standing is like the next step. Okay? But also, you will attain a great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus. Now, what this is talking about is that you will have a boldness, a greater sense of boldness before God, because you are doing what He has asked you to do. How many of you can testify that when you obey the Lord in the thing that you thought was hard or difficult, when you obey the Lord, you feel happy about it? I've seen a lot of nods heading. A lot of starting to phase out, people. You got to keep me awake. Yeah. When you obey the Lord, there's kind of like the fear of coming before Him and the nervousness of coming before Him is kind of taken away. I think He built us that way. You see Adam and Eve, they were hiding in shame in the garden after they sinned against His direct command. as a clear demonstration, but we know that by our own experiences, that it's no fun to be around the Lord when you have sin in your heart and you're guilty of it. It's on your conscience. So there's joy. You don't have to be afraid, and there's confidence in coming before the Lord when you are doing the thing on a regular basis that he has asked us to do. Fourth is that ministry is a whole lot more fun when there's other people doing it. Is that not true? Can I get a witness from the nursery? Yeah, there was a lot of times where we need some more people in the nursery. It'd be great. We need some more Sunday school teachers. It'd be fantastic. Hey, is there any chance that we could? And I kind of kept hearing it, and kind of a feeling of exasperation, like we need some more nursery workers. We're going crazy, And so it was kind of like that, and it can be downright lonely as a leader of a ministry or part of that to be closing up shop when no one else is around. It really can be. It's like everything is quiet, but who's going to do this job? I'm the only one. I'm the only one left that cares. It's kind of what you feel like at times. I remember down in Santa Clarita going to school is that the classroom for Sunday school seemed like about a quarter mile from the church because we met in the college campus. And so we would set up coffee. I didn't even drink coffee back then. Now I drink a little bit. Yeah. But I didn't even drink coffee, but I would set up the coffee table and then bring the creamers and make sure we had enough. And if I didn't have enough, I would go back to the main office and get some more and all this stuff. And what would happen, though, is that there wasn't very many other people that wanted to do this thing, and especially the people that drank the stuff. So I was like, this is kind of getting old. Is there any? So I made a sign-up sheet for this and I had the hardest time getting that thing filled up. It kind of became sort of a drag to do it until I can't remember, Georgia, did we eventually just say, forget it. You guys are on your own. Bring your own coffee if you want some. I don't remember, but I remember feeling, is there no one else here who wants to help? And actually, it can feel that way even today. I get that way at times. Is there no one else who wants to help? Am I alone in this? I would challenge you, men, to step up and start doing this thing called deaconing in some way. There's a fifth reason, and that is being around people doing ministry lifts your spirit. There's just something about it. If you are in this situation where it's your role to be deaconing, you get to hear about ministries happening because you're here. You get to see people praying with each other. You get to hear about the great stories of God's goodness as you're working with people. Somebody may have a specific need that you wouldn't have been around to help with because after church, you had to go for whatever reason. But if you're devoted to the thing of deaconing, you'll be around. And it's just an uplifting thing. It can uplift your spirit. You can be edified that way. This is kind of cool. I'm going to finish with this. You guys heard of Polycarp? I heard the name for years, but no clue who he was. Some early believer, I guess. I just discovered him in the process of researching deacons because the Bible doesn't have a ton of data on deaconing and what it means. But this guy, he was one of the early church leaders. He was a bishop or an elder, you might say, of the church of Smyrna. That was one of the ones mentioned in Revelation, I believe. Okay, he was a bishop, a leader of the church of Smyrna, and he actually had spent time with John. He had spent time talking with John, and he knew a lot of Paul's works because he probably had a lot of his letters. And so as you he actually wrote an epistle, just like Paul did. This guy, Polycarp, wrote an epistle to the Philippians. Philippians, you'll remember, was the other text where the elders and the deacons were mentioned. This guy wrote to that church and gave them instructions on what a deacon should do, just like he gave instructions on what a bishop or an elder should do, just like Paul does. This guy also did, but to the Philippians. And so I just want to read this little excerpt because this is not Bible, this is not inspired writing, but you can treat it as a pastor, okay? Think of him as a pastor, an early pastor who is preaching via a letter that he would have sent. And you're going to sounds awfully familiar. Knowing then that God is not mocked, we ought to walk worthy of his commandments and glory. In like manner should the deacons be blameless before the face of his righteousness, as being the servants of God and Christ, and not of men. They must not be slanderers, double-tongued, or lovers of money, but temperate in all things, compassionate, industrious, walking according to the truth of the Lord, who was the servant of all. If we please him in this present world, we shall receive also the future world, according as he has promised to us that he will raise us again from the dead, and that if we live worthily of him, we shall also reign together with him, provided only we believe. And then he goes on to talk about more, but isn't that kind of cool? You hear it from this is like the guy who the apostles are basically dying out. There are no more apostles alive. He's the next one, and we have one of his letters that is a confirmed letter. It's not like one of these spurious ones that you're not sure because the external evidence and the internal evidence doesn't line up. And it's like it's really like sound. Like this really is an authentic letter of this guy who lived until about the middle of the 2nd century. So really early in the Christian community.